Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. Today we are talking about making hedgerows and native plantings more accessible to growers, and we'll get some farm updates from the field. Oh, and of course it's Feedback Friday, so let's do it. All right, happy Friday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well, getting rain if you need it, cool weather if you need it, warm weather possibly too for you in the Southern Hemisphere, whatever it is you're after. Here, it's been storming on and off for the last 3 days, and 3 different soccer practices have had to be canceled due to lightning. Such a wet, weird month so far. Is it April and just like nobody told me? I feel like that's what's happening. As always, we'd love to hear what you all are up to. Let us know, or better yet, upload a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share that with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Always a super big highlight to see those. Anyway, it is Friday, which means Feedback Friday, where we explore what you all were saying about this week's topics. On Monday, we talked winter hardy greens and old music that got it right. Several other good winter green shoutouts, like this one from @JDT, who wrote, quote, "Yay for Kamatsuna, one of my favorites. Also, love me some scarlet tatsoi and purple mizuna for unique color. Tokyo Bakina is not as winter hardy, but grows so quickly you can harvest it before hard frosts. Beautiful light green lettucey color too," end quote. Indeed, those are some really good ones. I really love the mizuna as well, thrown into a salad. It's got a really nice, it's kind of like light spice to it compared to other mustardy types, but it's very tasty, and it's also like crunchy, and it's got a nice little fun shape to it. On ancient winter farming, Richard Gould Blue Haven wrote, quote, "Growing cucumbers was a respectable hobby for Roman emperors. They also used the gypsum greenhouses and would plant in wagons to chase the sun on warm winter days," end quote. Yeah, I guess necessity is the birthplace of invention, and sometimes that necessity is the emperor wants some dang cucumbers. On Tuesday, we talked about creating tilth at the top of the soil and invasive Chinese wisteria in wood chip form. On both topics, really, Seth L. wrote, quote, "I've been using landscape fabrics to kill weeds and prep beds. It allows more air and moisture exchange. So many worm castings after a lettuce or arugula crop. Great advice on the wood chip problem. The tarp will make sure the wisteria doesn't sprout. If they use a sharpened chipper, I don't think it will survive anyway," end quote. And sure, landscape fabrics can also do the trick nicely. They can be a little slower than like an opaque tarp because they don't quite have the same smothering effect, but over time they can be really effective. Stephen Rowe wrote, quote, "The slow method of creating tilt was the soil biology doing its thing. I think it has a term that I love, bioturbation. What a wonderful word," end quote. What a wonderful word indeed. It's one of those confounding and lovely things about nature where we think we need to handle the soil with kid gloves, but then you look at what the biology is doing in it and you're like, wait. I say it all the time, but if you took a cross-section of healthy soil and did a time lapse, it would look not like it's just sitting there static, it would be churning all the time. The biggest difference between what humans do to the soil and what organisms do is that when they disturb the soil, they generally leave it better off with their excrement and, decaying bodies. We flush our excrement to be treated chemically and pump our bodies with preserving materials before burying them so that stuff can't decompose them. Brilliant. Brilliant stuff, humans. Way to go. That day, @JJK21 wrote, quote, "You like those payments for the carbon credits," with a bunch of exclamation points, end quote. And I have no idea what that's in reference to, but if someone wants to send me some carbon credit payments, I'll accept them. In fact, incidentally, I have a little something to say about carbon credits later in this episode. On Wednesday, we went all fall interplanting options, when to start fall cover crops, and what warmer falls are doing to my planting schedule. Marco Spandolfo asked in Spanish, what was up with the roller tool I was using to mark the rows? And that roller is from Neversink Farm Tools. It's called the Gritter, and it's a tool that you could probably fashion out of like a small barrel and some fencing or something, but I love it. I use it all the time. It's significantly faster at marking rows than marking them with a rake. Rich Points and Rachel Mazar both noted that frost dates did seem to be shifting, and in fact, there's research to back that up. Depending on where you are, your last frost of the spring is moving up and your first frost of the fall is moving back. In some areas, it's a couple days on average over the course of the decade, but it may be more or less depending on where you are. Again, as I point out, a warmer winter without more sunlight is not necessarily a good thing, especially if it means hot, dry, unbearable summers. Then on Thursday, we talked about monitoring your physical activity on the farm, managing winter in a warm climate, and flipping potatoes from harvest to growing again. Lots of thoughtful comments on all of that, but especially the tech stuff. I liked this from @Arkinson Arkinso, we'll go with that, wrote, quote, "I'm not a professional grower, as I prefer to work with computers for my income. I'm a big fan of technology and always look for ways to improve my life with new inventions. I think many of the problems and pitfalls associated with technology are more accurately assigned to the shareholder value above everything else, business majors, the tech bros with marketing experience instead of an engineering degree, and the geriatric politicians who don't understand the rapidly changing industries they fail to regulate. Any engineer worth their salt understands when simple projects call for simple tools and good ideas don't get as much funding as flashy ideas," end quote. I mean, yeah, good ideas don't get as much funding as flashy ideas is about as true as they come. And although geriatric may be too strong of a pejorative for me personally, we have seen for decades now how the politicians we place in office have absolutely no idea what they're even looking at when it comes to regulating tech, which is a massive problem, and it will continue to be so, especially in the AI boom. On me suggesting people do not try to replant their potatoes, at Trish wrote, quote, "After a couple years of trying to reuse my own potatoes, both the following year and for late summer, what I found, and just thought I did something wrong, quote unquote, was what you told us in a few minutes. One year the store shipped so late I missed the regular planting window, which is partly why I started using my own. For 2027, I won't think about this any longer and do my best not to complain about buying seed potatoes and rejoice that that is one less decision to make. Thank you, Jesse," end quote. You're welcome. And I get it. Seed potatoes are expensive. It's not a crop that makes a ton of sense to grow for profit or in many cases for home use or for, like seed cost. I love growing potatoes, but they are very low on the profitability scale. Anyway, great stuff as always this week, friends. You all are the best. We're going to take a quick and mighty break. Not sure why mighty, but also not sure why not mighty. Anyway, when we come back, affordable native planting and hedgerowing, like the Norway thing, right? Hedgerows. That's what they should be saying. That's what they are saying. Fun fact. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Holden Tool Company. Holden Tool Company is a family-run business specializing in high-quality hand tools and small batch manufacturing for growers of all kinds. They offer forged hoes, forks, scythes, sickles, pruning tools, orchard tools, and forestry tools featuring traditional European designs that are hard to find at ordinary garden centers. These tools are practical, durable, and made for people who typically do work by hand. Holden Tool Company provides thoughtful customer service, helping you choose the right tool for your body, crop, or task. Find them online at farmandgardentools.com and use the code NTG26 at checkout. That's farmandgardentools.com. All right, back to the show. All right, let's dip into the mailbag and see what we've got. If you like this show and want to contribute a question or just want to support it and keep it going, then please consider signing up to be a Patreon member at patreon.com/no-till-growers. And as a bonus, I'll answer your question on the show. And who knows, maybe I'll even do a halfway decent job. We'll see. Our mailbag question today comes from Patreon member Kevin, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, a while ago you mentioned native plant plantings in market gardens and how that would be great in some spaces, but I think you said it could get expensive. I work with a nonprofit where volunteers collect native seeds, we clean and stratify them, and then we run workshops where community members winter sow them in upcycled milk jugs. Later, we run up potting workshops. It's almost free, and we end up with thousands of native plantings grown each year. I don't imagine this would be hard for a market gardener to do for personal use scale. Maybe this is a way to get some native perennial plantings out there in hedgerows and odd spaces for near free. What do you think?" End quote. First off, I think that's a very cool thing that you do. Honestly, I think it's a great idea in general. The biggest hurdles I see are less about desire to have, like ecological hedgerow plantings and that sort of stuff, and probably more about savoir-faire, like growers not being sure how to identify and then, effectively propagate native plants, and then also just capacity, i.e. having the time and brain space to pour into it. Effectively, native plantings also take some planning in terms of knowing where stuff is going to grow well, the space to put it in, good soil preparation and good management plans. So the limitations can be quite numerous in that way, but I do know there is a lot of interest in native hedgerows and having more native plants around. I've always thought that there is room for a nonprofit or maybe even a business who could specialize in installing native hedgerows on farms, paid for by grant funding or donors or whatever. or it should just be, a full government program. I don't know the full extent of how it works, but there is a lot of money out there for ecological restoration, and I would love to see some of that trickle down to farmers. For instance, if you are building a data center right now, and hopefully you are not, but if you are, you may have to support a certain amount of ecological restoration based on the amount of land mass you are taking up with your data center project. Setting all the terribleness of that aside for a moment, that means the company, and not just the data centers, but that's a big part of the revenue right now, can, for instance, pay other ecological restoration companies to replenish the amount of water or more than that data center is going to be displacing or using with their building in a nearby watershed or wetlands or whatever. So if the building is going into a wetlands area, they have to replenish a wetlands area elsewhere. It's kind of gross, but it's definitely better than doing nothing. But my thought here is that there needs to be a company who specializes in connecting ecological farmers with some of these benefits from these new building projects. So perhaps the ecological benefits, a regeneration of your fallow wetlands or some, biodiversity improvements, etc., could be given to local farmers, as well as other areas where there's abused or neglected land, from golf courses to whatever. It isn't just water, it's also biodiversity, habitat, etc., that these companies often have to replenish. And to me, it would make all the sense in the world to just have a team of ecologists from an ecological restoration company come by and say, hey, we have a bunch of money to improve some land. We'll pay you, do all the work and all the upkeep and all the reporting, and all you have to do is enjoy the ecological benefits. Because the truth is, I know a lot of farmers who have more space than they need, somewhat including ourselves, but that is not exactly, like farmable, like wetlands. We have an area down at the bottom of our farm that's just very wet, and it just kind of hangs out. It's not being well kept or enriched necessarily. And maybe there's some way to connect these kind of growers to this booming ecological restoration economy. Just a thought. It's heartbreaking to see so much land lost to data centers, but perhaps this ecological restoration could become a silver lining. Anyway, what was the question? Let me know what you all think. And otherwise, we're going to take one last quick break. And then I've got some random stuff going on in the field that doesn't quite yet fit into its own segment. So how about some from the field updates instead? Be right back in the field. Today's episode is brought to you by Good Agriculture. If the season is picking up and the pile of receipts is starting to grow, you're not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping so you can stay ahead of the mess before it piles up. They keep your books organized each month, help you understand what's coming in and what's going out, and show you where your farm stands so you can make better business decisions throughout the season. If you're behind, they'll help get everything caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show. All right, so we're going to jump into some quick updates from the field and show you a little what we have going on. If you're a podcast listener, well, I'm sorry. This is probably, like most field updates, not going to be the most exciting for you, but there is always the old YouTube channel if you want to actually visually see it. Anyway, here's me all around the farm. Enjoy. All right, so I've got a few projects on the farm going on right now that aren't like full on video segment projects at the moment. They may be by the end of the season, but for the moment I thought I would just share a few of them and talk about some of the things that we have going on here in August, which is suddenly like the most humid day ever. Yep. All right, first up is the sweet potatoes. They're doing pretty well. There's a grasshopper in there. They're doing pretty well. They seem pretty happy. I mean, we've had a ridiculous amount of moisture. You can see earlier this week I went through and pulled any grass that I saw in there. I do that about twice in a season. Maybe one more third time will be in order. I would imagine if you were in the West or somewhere where there's rattlesnakes and stuff, that would probably be the least exciting job ever. But here it's, I think the most I've ever been surprised by anything was a rabbit. Anyway, that's a big part of the project. And our leaves of our sweet potatoes always freak people out because they don't look like normal sweet potato leaves. The deer, however, don't care. They will eat them regardless. All right, one project I've been kind of mildly disappointed in, I guess, is the Altef perennial cover crop that I had underneath some tomatoes, just sort of as a trial. And the tomatoes are doing okay, but they got blight super early. They just don't look happy. None of them do. I have 3 rows. They're all treated pretty much the same. And it's been a little bit hard to get the teff and anything that's growing underneath of the tomatoes. There's no easy way to cultivate that. I still, in my opinion, having tried several different versions of a living mulch underneath of stuff,
I still just prefer it as living pathways. That just makes everything very streamlined, very easy. If it's just in the paths and then there's beds that you can hand cultivate or cultivate with a hoe or whatever. But in this case, it's just like kind of messy. So yeah, not my preference. I think about this all the time. So this is just a little patch of sweet corn, but I think about this all the time. If you were to walk through here, you're not gonna be able to see it super well, but this thing is loaded with pollinators. Everything from really, really tiny stuff that you probably can't see to like these big black bees to honeybees, lots of little bumblebees, all sorts of stuff, flies. And so you can imagine, and this is, I mean, I'm seeing thousands of them in this small little patch of sweet corn. And so you can only imagine that if you were in a big corn patch and you sprayed that thing with a bunch of herbicides, what would happen to all this life? Like, it is unreal how rich it could be, but how much damage it takes in a sort of, you know, conventional herbicide first, pesticide first growing system. All right, so this is interesting. So this is the milpa patch, right? You can see squash, the sunflowers, the beans, the sweet corn, and it's, I think from the storms that we've had and all the moisture, it has been pretty hard on it. And I also planted those beans way too densely, as I talked about before. The bean yield is going to be outrageous. It's going to be a pain to pick it, but like there is an enormous amount of beans here. So I'm going to get a lot of beans, get some decent sunflowers. I don't think I'll get much of any popcorn, unfortunately. But the other thing is, the okra looks okay. I keep forgetting to pick it, so I'm going to have a lot of okra seeds. But the other thing, though, that's done really well in this patch is definitely the squash. There's like all these little honey nuts, and this green monster here got a lot of really nice squash through here, and it's starting to die back. And I think there's some that you can actually see a little bit better up here. But yeah, I mean, these look great. Oh, this one's split, but these look great. Those are beautiful little honey nuts. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, like, it's starting to die back. There's definitely some pest pressure on these beans, but the beans, like, there's just an enormous amount of beans loaded all through here. So maybe that's just kind of the way it's going to roll. One or two crops are going to do extremely well, and maybe the third or fourth do okay. And then if I plant it a little differently next year and the weather's a little different, I'll get a different result. Yeah, and the last thing I'll mention is how well the elder flowers have done. Honestly, I didn't really have a plan to harvest them this year. I didn't expect anything from them. I planted them last year, but I'm getting so many elderberries. You know, I didn't really have a plan for like what to do with them, so right now I'm just freezing them. And then I saw this video online, and where, I don't know where else you watch videos, but I saw this video. This woman was just freezing them and then like shaking them off after they were frozen, and it gets rid of all the branch and whatnot. Oh, that one just came off. So that must be ready. But she was saying like harvest them when they're like 70% purple, which is about where this one is. So I've been picking off some of the greens and then taking all the purples and then shoving those in the freezer. It's kind of a cool project. I have quite a few elderberry plants. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a nice little surprise. Anyway, yeah, that's some of the fun projects going on at the farm right now. I'll show you maybe some more next week or the week after. Maybe I'll do a little roundup if you like these every week or two of just some of what I'm thinking about and what I'm in the middle of. All right, back to me.
All right, I hope you all enjoyed that little jaunt to the field. Again, as always, we want to know what's working and what's not on your farms and in your gardens. So yeah, upload a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share that with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Love those. And don't forget that next month is our anniversary month of the show. And like we did last year, I'd love to highlight some of you grower/musicians out there. Record or film your version of the theme song and upload that to Dropbox or Drive, similar to the 20-second farm video clip, and share it with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. And we'll lead the shows next month with those. Otherwise, I think that's it for this Friday. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so your donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is a super easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of August, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs today to Dwight Yoder. Always keeping us going, Dwight. Much appreciated. All right, so as you will remember, this week's story is about our composter heroine, Darla, whose crew has found what appears to be a giant egg in the compost pile. It's large, it's white, it's squishy, and it appears to be moving. Of course, Darla calls the fish and wildlife people just to, make sure whatever comes out of this is handled by people who understand, invites them out to the composting facility, even though they tell her on the phone that that is not an egg. There's no such thing as an egg that big. But yes, this is an egg, and they know that because it's starting to crack open. And out of it steps a baby Sasquatch? The crew all back away as the large, sort of hairy creature scans the scenery, sort of sleepily trying to figure out what's going on. And then it just sort of locks in on Darla, walks straight up to her, and nuzzles her. A sign, Darla thinks, that this is probably imprinting. Understanding the implications here, Darla immediately calls the Fish and Wildlife Service back. False alarm, she says. It wasn't an egg. No need to come. Nervously, she starts to just stroke the Sasquatch's small head and thinks, Littlefoot Compost Company. That has a nice ring to it. Anyway, that's where the Sasquatch comes from. They're all born in compost facilities. You didn't know that, did you? Anyway, thanks for watching and/or listening. We'll see you Monday.